Do the Dallas Cowboys need to add a safety early in the 2024 NFL Draft? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on Cowboys. Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That is $150 if your bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today is a very fired up Landon McCool. Go check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. He'll probably be tweeting some combine thoughts today. Landon, how you doing today, sir?
I'm good. I got to pre-apologize to Marcus. I've already ruined one of the starts so far because I was up till probably 2:30 in the morning watching the combine because of work stuff. But yes, I'm here. I'm excited to talk about safeties, and I pre-apologize for any crazy rants that I go on while being denied very much sleep while watching Underwear Olympics.
It's so good. All right, yeah, let's talk about the safety position. Just to let everybody know, on Monday, once we get all the combine numbers and Landon and I are able to watch all the drills and catch up on some sleep, we will talk to you guys about the prospects, the biggest winners and losers. So make sure you tune in for that. I want to talk about the safeties because we've had a lot of our colleagues talk about the Cowboys safety room, and a lot of them believe that the Cowboys need to add a safety early in the draft or maybe a safety in free agency. And I got to be honest with you, Landon, I just don't see it that way.
Yeah, I mean, what the old saying is there's safety in numbers, and I feel like the Cowboys have numbers at safety, and that's why it's a little bit odd, right? Is that like you look at the list and okay, you're likely to lose Kearse, but the truth of the matter is that you're probably pushing Kearse out the door because you like the guys behind him more that you want to kind of see it. And frankly, we know that Kearse is not a good fit for the Zim defense because he got pushed out of Minnesota. But yeah, I mean, I think if you look at this group, I mean, you have three extremely solid, I would say, safeties that you're not necessarily trying to not put on the field. And then, I think you've probably got another two guys in Mamu, who's an interesting player who can do kind of some inside-outside stuff. And then Sheldon Redwine, who, I think is a rosterable safety. Considering
NFL safety.
Especially considering he's like technically your sixth. Well, I guess now your fifth safety, right? So, it does seem I do get the same sense that you do, where I see this like on social media, just a lot of people talking about safeties, and to me, and I think you and I have talked about this, even with Kearse gone, safety is one of the deepest positions on this team, and I think that there certainly is talent enough at the top to be more than satisfied with their starting duo, and frankly, your starting trio. I'm not sure why there's this need to kind of necessarily go out and try to find a replacement in this draft when there are clearly other holes to be filled in spots that have, a much better, deeper class of players than safety in this class.
Later on in the show, Landon, we're going to talk about one of the reasons maybe the biggest reason why the Cowboys don't need to add a safety. It's just how many free safety looks are we going to get under Mike Zimmer compared to DQ? We'll talk about that in a little bit, but let's talk about the starters. Let's start with Jayon Kearse because you mentioned him. He played 860 snaps last year, only two behind Malik Hooker for the most on the team. He finished as PFF's 94th graded safety out of 95 qualifying safeties. Jayon Kearse has been a really good player for Dallas, but it's time to move on.
Yeah, I mean, the writing's on the wall here, I think. When Zim came in, I mean, frankly, like in a lot of ways, it's a slap in the face to Kearse because Zim is like clearly the reason that he left Minnesota. And he even talked about like how much of a problem it was and how lost he felt in that defense. So when Zim got hired, I mean, sometimes you write in pencil like guys that you think will be gone. I wrote Kearse's name in pen, because it's done. Like he's not going to be interested in re-signing. I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up back up in Washington. I think it just and on top of that, like I think what we just talked about, right, where you felt like the guys behind him were playing better football in a lot of ways, and so you didn't necessarily want to deny the opportunities for guys like for Wanye Thomas to get onto the field and that sort of thing. So I do think that there is a fit issue here, and that's part of the reason that you're going to see Kearse kind of be out the door. But I also think that a lot of it has to do with the fact that his play dropped off a lot, and even though he is a safety, and you mentioned that he all the snaps he took, I mean the vast majority of his snaps were taken like in the box, almost at a linebacker position. So it's not even necessarily like it's a 1-for-1 replacement in this defense, right? Like it's not like he really was even kind of a starting safety in this defense. He was more of like a linebacker hybrid safety type player. So I don't even know that the Cowboys necessarily need to view this as a starter that's being replaced. Really, I mean, who your starting safeties are, even when Kearse is gone, and it really didn't have an effect on the depth chart, to be honest.
Now, I want to talk about Donovan Wilson and Malik Hooker. If you want to tell me that the Cowboys should add a safety because both of those guys, Hooker turns 28 in a couple days, Donovan Wilson's 29. They both have an extensive injury history. I can at least understand that rationale. At the same time, the Cowboys literally just paid both of these safeties last offseason. They gave them multi-year deals. And I don't think their play this year at all made you want to move on from them anytime soon. So that's the hard part for me. Malik Hooker finished as PFF's 14th highest graded safety overall, one of the top coverage safeties in the league, 88.3 run defense grade. And then Donovan Wilson, who coming off the calf injury, Landon, struggled in the first half of the year, but by the end of the season, you can make an argument he was their best safety. So I understand adding maybe a depth piece, but in terms of like starters, I feel really good about Malik Hooker and Donovan Wilson as a tandem.
Yeah, I mean, look, you nailed it, and I think Hooker has been a paragon of steady free safety play that no Cowboys fan should be looking that gift horse in the mouth after decades of desert and wilderness in that specific position. And then on top of that, like you said, by the end of the year, Wilson and Jordan Lewis were apparently the biggest playmakers on this defense. And so, I do think that, we get Wilson with a full healthy offseason, hopefully. Obviously, you mentioned it. He's had problems staying healthy at times, but when he's been healthy, he has consistently been one of these guys who just creates plays. And so I do think that having him on the roster is a positive thing. Maybe you start kind of changing the formula of how of the deployment of these guys, maybe a little bit more Wanye Thomas being, mixed in here with this too. But I do think that if you're just looking at, do the Cowboys have quality safeties at this point? When they're healthy, Hooker, like I said, Hooker is just an incredibly consistent, a solid back end player, and Wilson is a high variance, creator of turnovers. I think they're quite a good pair, and then you've got some quality behind them.
Yeah, let's talk about those quality safeties behind the Cowboys, because I think that's the part to me that I just don't get. I really like some of the depth players in this team, and I want to see them play even more. Let's discuss Wanye Thomas next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That is $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all of your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and so much more. Go bet on those Lakers that just won a game last night in overtime. Listen, we told you yesterday to go bet on the Lakers. I'm telling you, going on a little hot streak now. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. All right, Landon, let's talk about some of the down roster safeties. But before we get to that, I want to mention that I think one of the reasons I'm so against the Cowboys spending premier draft capital or a lot of salary cap space when it comes to safeties is the fact that the scouting department has been good at finding safeties without having to spend top 100 picks. So like Malik Hooker signed a vet minimum deal. Donovan Wilson was a day 3 pick. Wanye Thomas was an undrafted free agent. Whatever you consider Marquise Bell, undrafted free agent. Jayon Kearse was a vet minimum guy. They've just been able to find these guys all over the place. Whoever's doing their scouting when it comes to the safety position, I feel pretty confident that they can find another one of these players.
Yeah, I mean, I think Wanye is the guy that we should talk about first, right? Just because he was such a breakout player last year and really showed you that he's, was not just a special teams player, but very good on defense. He ended up, I think, very highly graded with PFF, and just the eyeball test, like he just looked comfortable, looked like he knew what he was doing out there. There were definitely times when he made mistakes. There were definitely times when it felt like he was a rookie a little bit. And I think that's, part of the learning and growing process, but you saw more than enough to feel comfortable with heading into the season with giving him an opportunity to kind of be the next man up if something happens with Hooker and Wilson down the road, right? So, and that doesn't even include the funny thing is that we've had this whole conversation so far. We've mentioned all the young safeties, but the thing that we haven't brought up yet is that Marquise Bell is a candidate here, right? Because we don't know that he's necessarily going to be a linebacker next year, or if he does play linebacker, maybe he's flops back and forth between linebacker and safety depending on a package, kind of similar to what we see with Parsons, right? So. Just another body that can kind of play that position, in this locker room. So I do think Wanye, you watch what he does. You watch the fact that the Cowboys got him and Bell as undrafted free agents really proves your point, right? Like that the Cowboys have kind of found something here, and not even just that they're reliable to go and get safeties, like in that's something that you can hang a hat on. They've fully stocked the coffers. I mean, you've got 6 quality, safeties in the room right now. So yep. I can understand, I guess, like if you wanted to tell me that they were interested in, a day 3 safety or,
absolutely.
Yes. Like I'm on board with that, but like, let's not talk about spending really any day 2 picks on a safety when there are other spots that like, really kind of line up with what the Cowboys need. And I just think that this is one spot where you can afford to kind of wait a year because you've got quality veterans at the top. You've got these young guys behind. And I think that they need the opportunity to play before you need to go out and try to, refill the safety room without getting a good look at these guys that are behind the starters.
And I could even get behind drafting a safety high if it was like an elite prospect like Kyle Hamilton, right? Like somebody that was just going to elevate your room and kind of knock everybody down a peg, right? But that's not what we're really talking about here. We're talking about spending a top 80 pick on a guy that would probably just blend in and give you a little bit more depth. I just don't get it. I want to go to Wanye Thomas because Thomas had to play a lot early in the year when Donovan Wilson was coming back from the calf injury. Once Wilson came back, he kind of moved into that 4 safety role and didn't play a lot. But for a second-year player, I was impressed anytime he was on the field. You mentioned made mistakes. Okay, that happens. But he made more than his share of plays to make up for it. And I just want to give him even more opportunities going into year 3. And I'm going to keep talking about this. The Cowboys are going to have such a top-heavy roster over the next couple of years with, I'm assuming, a Dak contract coming, a CeeDee Lamb contract, a Micah Parsons contract, that you've got to find some cheap options for guys that are going to play somewhere between 400 and 800 snaps. Wanye Thomas is an undrafted free agent that is getting paid pennies, and I think he's a quality player. lean into that. Let him
Yeah.
be the third safety. Heck, if he outplays Donovan Wilson in camp, let him and Donovan Wilson split snaps. This one I just don't understand why you would want to add somebody else in here to kind of cloud things up even more.
Yeah, and again, I think, what's your plan with a guy like Israel Mukamu? Because, he's another guy that I think has shown you quality when he's been able to get on the field and
Yeah.
has shown you quality at a couple different positions too. So, like, what's the delay in kind of giving him an opportunity and a chance to get onto the field and play some free safety where he can reduce down and cover somebody in the slot? I just think that there are guys in this team that have shown you something that are already on cheap contracts. I think that I would like to see some more of those guys, and after what we saw from Marquise Bell at linebacker last year, what are we going to see from him again this year?
I was just about to mention him because, like, let's say they sign a linebacker and they draft one in round 2. Marquise Bell at that point is probably shifting back to safety. And now you're, again, absolutely loaded with numbers at the safety position. So we didn't even really factor him into this conversation at all.
But we should, because it is part of it. And honestly, even if he's playing linebacker, I guarantee you he is going to get some snaps as a safety in this defense because he's not going to be Marquise Bell is not going to play. I would be surprised. Maybe I'm wrong, and I'm not going to be upset if I'm wrong, but here's my anticipation. I don't anticipate Marquise Bell playing nearly the number of linebacker snaps as he did last year. I think just because of this defense, I think he'll still get opportunity to get on the field, especially at passing downs, because you want him in coverage. But I think that there's also going to be opportunities for him to be doing that as a safety, as opposed to a linebacker. So yeah, getting back to your point is, even if we think that the room is full, even if you don't count Marquise Bell, and if you do count Marquise Bell, it's like, guys, what are we doing? You're going to have to cut a quality player, put him on the street in order to make room for this rookie. And I think I don't have a problem with adding talent. I do have an issue with the kind of distribution of resources. Like you finally have found a safety room that's worth, sticking with. Let's give some of that extra help to some of these other rooms that really need it, specifically defensive line.
And just to be clear, I don't think this is the best safety room in the NFL, and it's not the strongest position on the Cowboys either. But relative to what you're paying this group, the talent and the depth might be as good as any position they have on their team, right? Like they're really paying this position pennies, and they're getting excellent play with excellent depth and with excellent numbers. Especially when you have needs at center, you probably need another offensive tackle. You could certainly need a wide receiver. You could use a running back. You need more edge help. You need more linebacker help. I'm just not all that interested in spending a top 3 round pick on a position. I mean, I know we're early in our draft study, but there's nobody in this draft that like blows my socks off when it comes to the safety position that I feel like, okay, you've got to go get this guy at pick 56. Like, I just don't see that at all.
Yeah, I agree. And again, I think in a world where you're probably going to be playing a lot of too high safety looks, like these guys can handle that. Like this isn't that, so and you don't have to have a steak dinner on every play, and every single room doesn't need to have all pros in it.
Yep.
Like this is a more than solid safety room. And I would say that it's a top half of the league safety room.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Maybe even top 10. Like, and that's without having like an elite player in the backfield. It's just a group of extremely solid, reliable players. And frankly, just to have 2 reliable safeties on this team, and considering we have 4 or whatever, is a win that most teams don't have the luxury of.
I would go even a step further. I think the tandem of Donovan Wilson and Malik Hooker is a top 10 safety unit in the NFL by themselves. And then when you add on the fact that you have guys with experience like Wanye Thomas, Izzy Mukamu, Marquise Bell, it makes it an even better group. So I think the Cowboys are more than fine there. And another reason why I think the safety room could be even better in 2024 than it was in 2023, Landon, is because I just think they're going to use less safeties. Let's dive into that next. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. A lot of us spend our lives wishing that we had more time. The question is, time for what? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? Would you take that extra hour in your day to go for a run? Would you take a nap? Would you read a book? The best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to find out what's important to you and make it a priority. Therapy can help you find what matters to you so that you can go do more of it. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's done entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch your therapist at any time for any reason at no additional charge. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Every dayers on Monday's show, Lana and I are breaking down the biggest winners and losers from the NFL Combine. Spoiler, we're not going to agree on all the players that we think are winners and losers. I can already tell you that right now.
I've already yelled at Marcus before this podcast about something that we disagreed on. So.
Yeah. So again, this is going to be a really fun show. Make sure you tune in for it. But Lana, let's just wrap up this safety discussion by talking about Mike Zimmer's defense. From everything that we've heard and read, it just sounds like the Cowboys are going to be using less 3 safety and 4 safety looks than ever before. Mike Zimmer is going to be a more traditional nickel defense with 2 linebackers and your 3 corners. And for that reason alone, I feel like the safety need just drops way down the board.
Yeah, I think that it's not that just to be clear, it's not that we think, or at least I'm just speaking for myself, it's not that I think that it's going to be less 3 safety looks specifically. I think it's just that a 3 safety look is a general nickel look, and I think there will be generally less nickel looks than there were previously, right?
Sure.
So it's not like they're specifically eliminating the 3 safety. It's that they're trying to use more base defense and try to use more base formation. So yeah, I tend to agree that that's exactly right. And so I do think there'll be less 3 safety looks. I think that I wouldn't be shocked if the number of 3 safety looks went down, but the percentage of nickel looks that were 3 safety looks went up,
Sure.
like that they decided to use more 3 safety when they went into nickel, but that they're just generally using nickel so much less that it's the numbers are less.
Sure.
But I just think that a part of that too is just because you've got a lot of talent there, like we've just been laying out, So I think that you're certainly right that another reason why you don't need to kind of continue to add to the already deep safety room is that this is a safety room that is coming out of a system in which there were times when you saw almost 5 safeties on the field, just because you had safeties at linebacker, at safeties at safety. Sometimes you'd have 3 safeties on the field and a safety linebacker, So I think in that sense, you're putting less schematic stress on these safeties. They're playing kind of more traditional snap counts, but I do think that what that helps, and this is I think what you were alluding to a little bit, is because you're not having to deploy as many safeties, you can be a little bit more judicious about rotating the safeties, right? Because your top end guys aren't having to play nearly as many to cover for the nickel looks that they're doing when they're deploying a 3rd or 4th safety on the field. You can rotate Hooker and Wilson out a little bit more to keep them healthy, which I think is a good thing, again, considering how deep this safety room is. So I definitely anticipate fewer 3 safety looks because of the drop in nickel. But I also would not be surprised if when they do go to nickel looks, they start looking to 3 safeties more because they just have so much depth there. And it provides just such a versatile package because, depending on who that 3rd safety is, whether it's Thomas, whether it's Mamu, whether it's Bell, like you can do so many kind of different things because they all have very kind of varied skill sets and they can all be deployed in a bunch of different ways.
I also just wonder, Landon, are they just going to keep fewer safeties this year than they did last year? I think
maybe
did they keep 6 safeties last year with Kearse, Wilson, Hooker, Wanye, Bell, and then Mamu. Right now, Bell ended up moving to linebacker, but I think on their initial 53-man roster, it was 6 safeties that were listed. I don't know if they're going to do that again. Like I would be
Well,
kind of surprised.
unless they decide to kind of fudge it a little bit by saying, okay, we want Bell because, we use him in package. So he's also our game day linebacker 4, right? And then we want McQuamu because he's playing special teams. So maybe we make him, safety 4, but also cornerback 4, right? Like,
Sure.
and so you find a way to try to like make them game day active by utilizing their versatility to put them in the depth chart so that that they're rosterable, right? And so instead of like rostering a fifth corner who is only a corner, right? You game day roster a guy like McQuamu, who, if there's an injury, he could step out and play in the slot. But if there's an injury at safety, he can also go back and play free safety as well. That's probably how you have to do it. And then on top of that, you're probably going to have to, you may be saying goodbye to someone like Sheldrick Redwine or someone like that who's a little bit further down. Tyler Coyle, I think, is still on the team in some capacity, if I'm not mistaken.
Probably.
But yeah, I think, again, like 7 safeties deep at this point. So yeah, I think, there is a likelihood that they just kind of reduce the number because, even with the kind of shuffling them around to get them on the field, there's just not enough mouths to feed at the safety position in the Zimmer defense.
Yeah, I agree. You mentioned Tyler Coyle. I was thinking about some of the down roster safeties the Cowboys have had over the last couple of years. Jamil Showers. Think he's still around?
Quarterback Jamil Showers. I'm still upset that they didn't let him finish playing quarterback. It was his best position by far.
Yeah.
I never understood that whole process.
Just to be clear, I'm not opposed to the Cowboys drafting a safety sometime on day 3 or making the safety and undrafted free agent like their highest paid, UDFA.
Absolutely.
Like that's fine. If they want to add more talent that way to the safety room, totally understand. But spending one of your top 3 picks just is bizarre to me. And frankly, I don't see that happening. I don't.
It's a weird allocation of resources. That's what it comes down to, is that the Cowboys have a lot of needs. We've talked about it. This is one that it just feels like it's an unnecessary high spend if you're taking it in the top 90 picks.
Unless there's something else coming down the pipe that we don't know about, maybe the Cowboys releasing one of these safeties or something. But barring anything sudden or surprising like that, I actually think they're pretty well set at that position. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Go check out the channel on YouTube. We post videos every single day over there. Go download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosier. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy the combine. And we will see you on Monday to break it all down.